Welcome back to Orange Hat Reviews, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. So, episode 33, the return of the mystery reviews. And the reason why I say return is because I haven't been able to really do many mystery reviews at the time because there was a lot going on, and after certain events in my personal life, I had to take a step back. I couldn't get a clear schedule of things. So, yeah, now that March is upon us, Mardi Gras and all that other stuff, I figured get back into the mystery reviews. I will also be doing a lot more. I will be getting back into the movie discussion reviews. So, yes, I'm getting back onto a more set schedule. Hello, lovely Sherry. So, getting back into this one, I gave 3 hints. The first 2 hints were Hypothalamus and what was the other one? Hypothalamus, and I think it was the Field Museum in Chicago. Yes, Field Museum. And then I gave the bonus hint, which was a line from the movie, She Got Jerry, with a question mark. And then I gave a final hint, which was, I believe, well, I have my phone here so I can check. Because I did it on Facebook. Let's see here. Yes, the final hint is Callisto Effect. So, for those of you who do not know, the Callisto Effect is a scientific theory that evolution, or during the course of evolution, there are some split branches of evolution that are rapid evolutions that cause deformed or grotesque aberrations in certain species where they are short-lived because of it. Now, oh Lord. I hate it when people call me on the phone sometimes, even if it is family. But they understand that I do have things that I do during certain times. Ruben Thomas official, lovely Sherry. Good to see you guys. So, again, the hints were. Jesus, now I just blanked again. Callisto Effect was one. Field Museum and Hypothalamus. And the line, She Got Jerry. Yes, the person who called is actually in the chat. It's good to see you, Chris. Sorry, buddy, but I'm streaming. But yeah. So this movie was in 1997. It was an adaptation from a 2-book series. So, yeah, this movie also falls in the horror genre. So, can anybody guess so far? Well, I'll give you all 15 seconds to guess. I'm literally playing the Jeopardy theme in my head. So, no guesses. Well, okay, so we're doing The Relic. Now, this movie has a pretty good cast, actually, from the 90s. This movie stars Tom Sizemore, Penelope and Miller, Linda Hunt, who has played great characters in her career, uh, James Whitmore, God bless that man, the late James Whitmore. And this movie takes place in South America and then moves into Chicago, specifically the Field Museum. This movie was based on the novel by Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child. So Preston and Child is as they call it. This horror movie is one that has thrills, chills, and lots of kills. Directed by Peter Hyams and a Paramount Pictures production. The score by John Debney in this film is downright chilling. I mean, at certain points in this movie, you honestly think that people are going to die. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But yes, this movie starts in South America where a scientist, an anthropologist named John Whitney, was observing a tribe called the Zanzara tribe. And while they are doing one of their rituals, they decide to include him in this ritual. And they give him a tea that they have concocted. And you see them put these leaves in this tea that have these red-like, fungus-like eggs or parasitical eggs. And he drinks it. He gives a small little cough. And he thinks that it's just, he thinks that it's a great honor. Boy, he doesn't understand what he's getting into. So then he sees the tribal, or he sees what the ritual was all about. And he sees one of the tribesmen dressed up to resemble one of their deities or demons known as the Cathoga. And he says, "Oh God, the Cathoga." And he starts freaking out. And one of the things that they actually do pretty well is they actually do show or portray these natives very accurately. Because the thing is, when you look at a bunch of natives in different movies, well, some of them don't understand the concept of, modesty. And they show that this one indeed has very little modesty in it. There's a woman who she is topless. She is old. She is the one that presents the tea to the guy. And she smiles when he starts freaking out when the Cathoga tribeman hisses at John Whitney and scares the hell out of him. Well, then he's going down to the port in Brazil to try to stop his crates from going on a ship, the Santos Morales. And he's like, they need to come off. They need to come off. Now, the acting of this man's desperation of trying to convince this captain that his stuff needs to come off, you really believe that there is an urgency to this. That is actually very good acting. And so when Whitney sneaks on board, there is, to find his crates, he finds Chicago, Illinois stamped on the crates, rips it open. There are a bunch of rugs. So then he screams out, and it goes out to the harbor, or to the port, rather, where the ship is leaving from, and you see that his crates are still in the port. So actually he, in a way, succeeded, but he didn't think he thought they were on the ship. So he was obviously screaming out in horror because he knew what was about to happen to him, and what was about to happen outright. And if you hear some crackling, I'm sorry about that. That is the plastic against my window. My window was not put in properly in a 100-year-old house. So yeah, there's wind that will be blowing through the cracks. So if you hear a little bit of crackling, I am sorry. I cannot help that any further than I've already tried to. I mean, I've literally tried making this very tight against the window, but sorry. So we then skip to Chicago 6 weeks later, and we're introduced to one of the main characters, Tom Sizemore, who plays Lieutenant Vincent D'Augusta. In all of the movies that I have seen in my life, I absolutely love Tom Sizemore's Vincent D'Augusta. This man has some of the greatest freaking lines in a movie. And a lot of people think that The Relic is just a horror movie and whatnot. If you really pay attention to this movie, you realize that, oh my God, I love this person I love Tom Sizemore's portrayal here. So he's like, what do we got? We got blood all over the place. It was floundering in the harbor. We towed it in. Now, a lot of people are probably going to ask, how does a ship sail from Brazil to Lake Michigan? Well, I'm so glad you asked. There's a river that sails up through the United States, Mississippi. So yes, it is conceivable for that ship to make it through. So, I do want to go back to the South American part for 1 second, because there's a fun fact that you realize if you know Spanish and Portuguese. The character who plays the captain is yelling in one of these languages, or actually in both of them. And he's literally speaking gibberish. You can only understand that the dialect is of Spanish and Portuguese, both. And it's like, what is he saying? But in the movie, he's basically saying, we got to go, we got to go. Time's wasting, we got to go. Because he's 8 hours late. There's a storm coming in, and he's got to clear, or customs is cleared. He's got to go. So, yes, now the detectives get on the boat. He's like, this boat was fun. He's like, it's a ship, Hollingsworth, not a boat. And the pointy end is the bow, says sarcastically. You could tell he's upset about something. So then Hollingsworth, his partner, he's like, custody hearing went badly, I take it? I don't want to talk about it. She got Jerry? Well, part of I don't want to talk about it is unclear. And so the cop, or the beat cop next to Hollingsworth, is like, his ex-wife got custody of his kid, or of his son. No, his dog. His dog? Yeah, he really loves that dog. And that's one of the reasons why I like Vincent D'Augusta. He loves his dog, man. That dog is like a kid to him. So they're checking it out, and this movie is pure 90s horror where it has the mistakes. This movie is far from perfect, but it is still very good. Now, what I mean by classic movie 90s mistakes is they never get the blood right. Blood on the wall. They're like, yeah, that's blood. The lab's checking it now for type. Well, if you know anything about blood, once it dries, it becomes brown. Well, the dried blood on the walls was like scarlet red. Just saying. Yeah. So you then see them looking through the cargo area, and they're talking about what happened. It came out of Brazil, and the crew, or this is obviously probably a drug hit, whatever they came on board looking for, they found. And Hollingsworth scares a cat, and it runs off, and Vincent's like, what was it? He's like, it was a cat. It scared the hell out of me. He's like, was it a black cat? No. And he's holding the bullet in his hand. Well, this is the first clue that Lieutenant Vincent D'Augusta is superstitious. So, yeah, superstition is a big part of this movie. And it turns out that some superstitions, well, they might be warranted in this movie. So then they're like, what does that stink? And he's like, is the bilge below here? Yeah. Well, help me out. They open up the bilge, and then they see the dead bodies. Heads ripped off. The bodies are floating in the water, decomposing. And they're like, holy crap. And they realize what kind of horror they stepped in. They don't know that it's a creature or anything, or a monster or whatever, but they realize that there's a killer that is now loose in Chicago. So then we skip to a week later after that. So we get introduced to Penelope and Miller riding in on her bike, and these kids are ditching school, and she's tucking in her clothes and whatnot before she goes in, and the kids talk to her, and they go into the Field Museum of Chicago. Well, then we're introduced to another character named Fred Ford, who's the desk jockey at the entrance of the museum. And she signs in, and Linda Hunt is introduced, Dr. Cuthbert. Linda Hunt played this character very well. She played it, or she's not a person that is like, we need to do this no matter what's going on. We need to do this. It doesn't matter if there's a danger. We need to do this because there's an exhibit going on and a gala that is scheduled to come up. And her character is just played brilliantly by Linda Hunt, Dr. Cuthbert. I mean, short stature, but she has a commanding presence in all of her roles that she has played, especially in Kindergarten Cop. But yes, she's letting Margot Green, Dr. Green, Penelope and Miller's character, know that another person is applying for her grant that she is applying for from the Blaisdell Foundation. And she's like, I just want to do my work. So she goes into her lab, and Greg Lee, the guy who's also applying for the grant, is in the lab too, and he's trying to get away. Well, she immediately confronts him. She's like, is there anything you would really like to tell me? Of course not, because if there was, you'd just come right out and tell me. I have a right to apply for any grant. So you go behind my back and apply for my grant. It's not your grant until you get it. And he's right there. Technically, he is right. But he's still an asshole. You just feel the slime from this character. Just sloughing off him. And so she explains the urgency of needing that grant, about how if she doesn't get it, she's out of work and her staff is out of work. And she's an evolutionary biologist, so yeah, they kind of need some dough to do their work, you know? And one of the things that I really do like is that they actually do bring in science in this. They really do explain the science in this, how they do certain things and what is part of their lab and all sorts of things. So we then let's see here. See her go by John Whitney's office while his door is open. So she goes in and is looking in the crates that are in his office. Well, Dr. Cuthbert and a new character, Dr. Frock, played by James Whitmore. He's an old man in a wheelchair. He's a superstitious fellow. He's like, well, I asked Margot to join us. I hope you don't mind. And he winks to Margot so she's not into any trouble. And they're like, and they find that there's this relic that was in the beginning of the movie that was lit very dimly by firelight. And you then see the same relic, but it's smashed in one of the crates, and they bring it out. It's like, they call it the Cathoga. And Margot is not superstitious. She is she's a scientist. She doesn't believe in superstition. And I love one of the lines in this movie, or that she comes out. And because when they're describing what Cathoga is, she starts rolling her eyes and she's like, why is the museum still funding John Whitney's work? Anthropologists are permitted to believe in myth. It's part of their job. And she's like, using superstition to draw people to the museum because they also are Cuthbert explains this, or we might be able to use the exhibit, or this for the exhibit for the Superstition Gala. And this gala will bring in a lot of money, and that benefits you as well. And she says, using superstition to bring people to the museum is like hiring topless ushers for the Bolshoi Ballet. And then you hear fucking Dr. Frock, James Whitmore, he's like, well, if they did, I'd probably go to the ballet. and you see the look that Margot gives him. And they're like, well, what's in this other crate? Aside from the packing leaves, there was nothing. Nothing. Was there a manifest? The crates were nailed shut when they arrived. So then she sees the red fungus or whatever it is on the leaves, and she's like, strange. And what? Well, do you think these are eggs? And he's like, yeah, probably some sort of fungus. Best not to, probably parasitical. Best not to take any chances. So Cuthbert says, we'll have the leaves and the crates incinerated. And as she wheels out Dr. Frock, Margot is looking at these leaves, and she leans down, and then you hear Frock off screen, of course you can, Margot! Basically letting her know that she can examine the leaves. And that is another piece of nice acting. It shows that these people are comfortable with each other, and it shows that there's a nice harmony on the set at the time. It just really looked like it went well. So then the class ditchers are stuck in the museum because time passes, or the museum is now closing, and the kids are getting ready to check out a staircase. And Fred, the desk manager from the entrance to the museum, is in the restroom, and he's about to light up a joint. And he hears the door open, so he hides his joint. And he hears you hear this sniff, and then you feel the door, or you don't hear the door closes, but he thinks that the person has moved on. Well, he then takes another kind of loud drag with a smacking of the lips after, and you then see a huge shadow come into the room, and this kind of asthmatic wheezing. He's like, Johnson, Davis, that's you. And then you see the monster grab his leg and pull him out from under, and it just focuses and zooms in on the joint a little bit, but you hear the sounds of the monster growling and the screaming and the tearing and all of it. And then Eric cuts to Margot doing her work, and she's so focused that a skeleton pops up and slams against her door or her window. And it's her staff. They're like, Dr. Green, I've worked myself to the bone. Please let me go home. I need to rest. And it was just so cute. It's something that you don't expect in a horror movie, but it's a good throw off. It's a good way to put your mind at ease. And so she lets him go. Something smells good downstairs. But anyway, so she lets him or her team go, and then she goes to sign out, and she hears a sound. Now, you don't know what the sound is, but you probably get an idea that it might be the monster, you know? And so then the ditchers or the kids who ditched class are still stuck in the museum because they're afraid of what would happen if they went for help. So they're on the stairs, and they hear a noise, and they smell something horrible. So then you see the movement, and they're scared, and then you see this camera from up high zoom down to those kids. Well, then the next day, CPD homicide, Chicago homicide, shows up to investigate the death of Fred Ford, the desk manager. And Greg and Margot are outside, and he's like, haven't you heard? No, but I'm guessing you're going to tell me. Somebody was killed. murdered. Oh my God. They're not telling us who. They're just, or all I know is that they cut off the whole basement level. Murdered? I'm guessing it was Colonel Mustard with the candlestick. And so she just walks off in disgust, and he's like, what? What are you thinking? You're thinking of my asshole, right? Is that it? And then he's like, eh. So then the cops stop her, ask her if she's Dr. Green, because Homicide wants to talk to her. Degusta wants to talk to her because she was the last one in or out of the museum. Well, then you see the kids are being comforted, and they're obviously scared. And the cops and Degusta is in there, and he's like, I want these kids brought down to the 15th, and I want them questioned in the presence of a psychologist. And other people are asking, well, what happened? Or people are wondering when they can come in. Do we keep them out? Yes, keep them out. Nobody comes in until we until we clear the building. And then Dr. Green comes in, and he's like, can I help you? Yes, Detective Degusta wants to see me. He does. There's Dr. Green. Oh, Dr. Green, I'm Lieutenant Degusta. I am on a case right now. Or can I meet you later? Can I go to my lab? No, right now we're investigating the lab. So, well, what am I supposed to do? He just leaves her there. And so they go in to discuss or to investigate the scene, where in the restroom. And you see Degusta looking around. He's like, and then he sees this broken mirror. He's like, this is not good. And one of the other guys is saying that it stunk really bad. And he goes in and he's like, I always thought the worst way to die was a shark attack. Getting my head ripped off never occurred to me. And you then see that he's like, where is this at? Yeah, it's over there by one of the stalls, or by the sink rather. And you also see his brain has been removed. So you're getting the small little clues as to what this is all about. And then you see one of the CSIs is like, hey, there's a half-burnt joint over here. Hey, Price is right. Good to see you, buddy. And he's like, it looks like our guard was doing a little pot on the potty. Pot's a misdemeanor. Decapitation seems a bit severe. And then you see Margot come in. She starts freaking out because she sees the horror of the room. And he's like, get her out of here. Now, you see that he's very upset that somebody just walked in on the crime scene, But it's kind of urgent that they get her out. So that's good acting there, too. And I got to say, Penelope and Miller does really know how to do a convincing freak out. I mean, I almost expected her to throw up. I mean, it's like, goddamn, she actually did that one good. I'm reviewing the Relic Price. And so, yeah. He's like, okay, let's get out of here. And then Hollingsworth is about to step over the body. He's like, no, don't step over it. It's bad luck. I want the blood on the walls. Get ballistics in here, full splatter pattern, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, oh my God. So you just know that this is, you know that there's something really going on that's bad. Now, you know it's a monster because the monster, you see the monster's hand pull him out, and you also hear it too when it attacks. So we know it's a monster, but I do like the investigative process. Now, let me get back to my talking points here. Degusta then meets with Dr. Cusper and the security head Parkinson. Oh my God, that dude is such an asshole in this movie. He plays such an asshole in this movie, rather. And he's like, have you identified the victim, Lieutenant Augustino Degusta? The victim's name is Frederick Ford. Freddie Ford. Oh my God, what a terrible, terrible waste. Yeah, I'd say somebody was very pissed off at him. You don't have any idea who that might be? No, he was a very sweet man. We have no idea. Hardly knew the guy. So he's looking at Parkinson like, holy shit. He might be a good person. Now, when Cuthbert asks, I don't mean to downplay the horror of this tragedy, but what about the museum? And he says, I'm going to do this in layers. We're going to clear out every places so you guys, or to determine that there is no danger. You guys can go to your labs, do your work and whatnot. And she's like, well, what about the exhibition space? When will that be open? I can't tell you exactly when. And she's like, we have a major gala that's about, or it would be a disaster if we had to postpone. And he's like, I will do the best I can, but it has to be by the book. So you know that this is a detective that takes his job seriously. And Tom Sizemore delivers a great performance in this movie. So, yeah. He's like, now, we do got to be careful because with this, we're dealing with a situation here or somebody here that makes Jeffrey Dahmer looks like a Cub Scout, and I have to be sure that he is not here. So then he walks off, and from an ignorant perspective, I'm no police expert at all. I like how he gives the rundown of what he's going to do. We're going to do this in layers. We're going to sweep the different areas to determine there is no danger, so you guys can go in and do your work, and then we will be able to do everything else. So yes, from an ignorant perspective, I think that it was handled very well. That is, to me, what I think police procedure is a good example of. Now, then we see DeGusta meet up with Dr. Green, and he's like, or she's walking with him, and they're going through the other parts of the labs, and she's like, what's the soup today? Rhinoceros megarinus. And you think that he's like, is he making rhinoceros soup? And they say it's a maceration tank. Toss the bones in, or the water or boils the meat off, strip or toss them in a tank and give them to the beetles. Beetles is in bug beetles, dermestid beetles. And you see a rib cage in there full of just beetles just picking that bone clean, man. And she's like, they're a common insect. They eat the flesh off of anything. They pick the bones clean. And you then hear a person say that, careful, somebody left the glass door open and a bunch hit the highway. Well, they know better than to go down to the cafeteria. And DeGusta apologizes for what she saw at the crime scene. And she's like, I've said hello to that man for every day for the last 2 years. You could have closed the door. He's like, did you know him well? And she's like, no. Then she looks down and she sees a penny, and she goes to pick it up. And he's like, wait, is it face up? Down. Don't touch it. Face down's bad luck. Don't tell me you're a superstitious. Sorry, but around here, every penny counts. And so he's like, what can you tell me about John Whitney? Do you know him? Unfortunately, his office was vandalized last night. And then you see that his office door had a big window or hole punched into the window. And for some reason, the mirror in his office was shattered too. So if you're thinking like a psychologist, like I often do, whoever is doing this doesn't like what they see when they see themselves. So yeah. And it's understandable because this is a creature that used to start out as a human, and he finds himself grotesque, but he's also operating in an instinctive or instinctual mode. So yeah. So he's like, John Whitney, or did John Whitney ever buy or sell drugs and whatnot? And he's like, or she's explaining to him that he's not in Brazil selling drugs. He's just investigating insignificant relics. And she's like, Brazil. Yeah, there was crates that arrived with or and whatnot. Happy day to you too. Happy Dino. Good to see you, buddy. So yes, we're discussing the relic. And so she's like, one had a smashed relic, the other was empty. Nothing was in it. That's what empty means. Could it have been pried open? It was nail shut. Could it have been pried open and then nail shut? Sure. I mean, I guess so. What do you think? Or what are you suggesting? There were drugs in the crate? I don't suggest. Where are those crates? They were, or they and the packing leaves were incinerated. And he's like, or so she takes him to see the restorative genius of the museum who's restoring the relic. And she's like, this is John Whitney's relic, or what's left of it. And he's like, any idea what it is? With black stone, it's difficult. It's a chimera of some kind. And he's like, what's a chimera? A chimera is a being that some superstitious believe to be either God or enemy. It's like, what kind of superstitious people? And then his beeper goes off, which really dates the movie. And he's like, if you guys got any or can think of anything else, gives her a card. You're welcome. So he has to go down to the autopsy. Now, one of the things I do like about this movie is there are so many superstition things. This movie does go through the superstitious angle very well. You don't step over a dead body. You don't let a black cat cross your path. Broken mirrors. The whole shebang, man. This movie is basically everything you don't do when it comes to superstition. And they did all of it. I wouldn't mix drug and ancient relics. If shit goes wrong, you're snorting religious artifact. Oh, God, I love that, dude. Happy you just won the internet today, dude. You just won the internet. But, yeah, totally can agree with you. Oh, also, I did get a new ring today. I absolutely love this one. This is a black tungsten carbide one ring. I really do like that it really shows the scripture of the ring. So, yeah, I recently got that, too, today. Or yesterday, actually. But, yeah. So, let's see here. Let me go back to my talking points and get rid of the stuff that I have already covered, so I do not need to cover it again. So now we're at the autopsy. And this coroner, Matilda, is just so freaking dirty-minded. She's like, Lieutenant Augusta, it's so wonderful to see you. Don't you just, or 7 decapitations in 6 weeks, don't you just, or in 1 week, don't you just hate somebody who gives head, or who takes head and never gives it? He's like, you're bad, Matilda, really bad. He's like, I heard the ex got custody of the dog. Was it all over the goddamn internet? You shouldn't have been late on your Alpo payments. So, oh, that's my thing. Anyway, hold on 1 second, folks. Nice. Happy dinosaur. That's pretty cool. I just saw your comment come in. Set coming my way. That's awesome, dude. Good on you. So they do the autopsy and they find out that the brain is light and that it's missing the thalamic region, the pituitary gland, and all that stuff. And they go over what the hypothalamus does. It regulates body temperature, it regulates the body and whatnot. So another thing I like is when she pulls off the sheet to the dead body, you see Vincent D'Augusta. He's like, he just looks away from it. And he's like, any idea about a weapon? Something big. I mean, this movie just has great lines to it. So there's a small continuity error in this scene where the coroner's mask ties are either above or below her microphone that she talks into. but it's really not too much. It's really something that you would just miss if you're not paying attention. Now, we then get back to Dr. Green, and she's doing an analysis on the leaves. And she finds out that these leaves contain a bunch of hormones, a lot of animal hormones. And she's like, this fungus is loaded with hormones. What kind of fungus is this? And while she's reading all this stuff, you see one of the domestic beetles go into the package that she has the leaves in. And then she puts the leaves back into the package, and it's like, oh shit, that domestic beetle is about to get a really good snack. Yeah. So, as she's leaving, or we then see DeGusta investigate the hypothalamus angle. He calls Hollingsworth. He's like, Hollingsworth, I hope I'm interrupting your dinner. I want you to pull the autopsy reports from all of the Santos Morales victims. Find out if any parts of the brain were missing from any of the heads. Hey, let me ask you something. How the fuck does somebody get custody of a dog? I love that line, man. Anyway, I was about to make an orange hat will return joke. Oh, nice. I like that Alpo payment joke. Yeah, right? So sounds like that movie I passed out to to last night, 1 a.m. So many pheromones will get you chicks and prevent ScarJo from shooting you. Right? So Margot's then checking out the superstition exhibit, and this is where the music, like I said, the music in this film is very good. And it starts flaring up a little bit, creeping up, and she hears movement around her in the shadows. Now, it's the Cathoga. It's the monster moving around. And so she runs out. She's scared. She doesn't know what she's running from. But then she gets into the restroom or the women's room. Sorry about the shaking, folks. My leg just kind of moved the, yeah, sorry about that. I was moving my leg, getting it out from underneath the desk. But anyway, so she gets into the restroom. She hides like Freddy Ford did, and you hear the wheezing. You think it's the monster, and it's going to kill her. Well, then you hear different sounds like water running, very suspicious writing on the wall, and monster in the bathroom, right? And then she looks, and it's one of the cleaning ladies who has asthma. So the sound you hear of her using her inhaler sounds like the wheezing from the monster. And it's like, oh my God, dude, seriously, that is just great that they did that, So then you see DeGusta with Dr. Cuthbert again. And he's like, there might be somebody very dangerous in this museum, and I don't think you want him here tonight. No, we can't have that. So then you also get cut between the cops in the basement and how they're investigating the last bits of the museum. And they go down into an area where there's too much concrete to cut off cuts off communications. Well, then you see Margot take it, or he goes and sees, DeGusta sees Margot then rehearsing a speech for the Blaisdell Foundation, or her plea for the Blaisdell grant. And you also see a shot of the creature being partly shown, how it's in like a subterranean area and how it starts to move. And it starts to go back on the hunt. Then while DeGusta's trying to talk with Dr. Green, she's like, I'm sorry, detective, but I really have. And he's like, I'm not here to ask you out, Dr. Green. I'm just wondering if there is anything else you could tell me about John Whitney's work. So she takes him to Dr. Frock, and he explains about the relic, and he's like, or the superstitious angle. And he's like, well, that relic is very important to me too, because it might shed light on a theory that I have called the Callisto Effect. Monsters are very photogenic like dinosaurs. Well, later on, this monster is indeed, yes, the relic we are talking about. Wonderful sound design, exactly. So, hold on. He then goes over his theory of the Callisto Effect, which is sometimes evolution evolves creatures rapidly, but it ends up creating a deformed and grotesque aberrant species, also short-lived. Well, there is a lot to that. Orange Hat will return in Call of Orange Hat. Yeah, I know, right? So he also explains what John Whitney was doing down in Brazil, investigating the Zanzara tribe, their history, their culture, and whatnot. And DeGusta's like, so John Whitney's down in Brazil investigating tribal rituals. Do any of these rituals have anything to do with, say, ripping out the human hypothalamus? I beg your pardon? Human hypothalamus? And you see Dr. Frock kind of give him a look like, is this really appropriate? He's like, never mind. And he leaves it at that. So then we cut back to the police that are down in the basement and how they see a footprint that's like a size 14 shoe. It's just 1 inch shorter than mine. And they're thinking this guy must be over 7 feet tall. And so they end up killing a homeless person that you hear squealing that almost sounds like a creature too. So they shoot this person, then they're investigating it. And McNally's like, this guy was convicted rapist. He'd done 2 times, hard times. He's been stalking and other stuff too. And whatnot. Zanzara translates to bring us a monster. Are you serious? That is hilarious. In Portuguese or Spanish? That'd be interesting to find out, dude. Tell me more. So he's like, and he fits the description given to us by those 2 kids. Well, the kids didn't see him commit the murder. Oh, come on, Lieutenant. I mean, he attacked McNally with the fucking axe. I mean, if you want to cut somebody's head off, an axe is a pretty good way to do it. I know. But something's just bugging me. What? Or something's not right here. What do you mean something's not right? Something what? You're a pain in the ass. You know that? Hey, here comes the rent-a-cop. You see the head of security coming down. Oh, okay. I thought you were serious for a second. To be fair, homeless are easily mixed up with wolf people. Right? But yes, and because of the head of security, Parkinson, he's like, he had the dead guard's wallet. He was covered in a dead guard's blood. What else do you need? Videotape? That'll help. Because he looks like a judge, man. Maybe. No. He's like, this is nuts. Something's wrong here. This guy gets off a boat from Brazil and comes through the tunnels to the museum, and he starts ripping out people's hypothalamuses. What is he starting? Hypothalamus collection? And then he takes a cab and hides out in the sub-basement after getting off a boat from Brazil. He's like, I don't know anything for boats for Brazil, but it's obvious to me that this man killed Frederick Ford. 2 + 2, Lieutenant. In my book, that's 4. You have to let the gala go on tonight. I don't have to let anything go on tonight. And I love that little bit there, too. Hey, Phil, good to see you, buddy. How you doing? No, you fool. He needs a DVD. VHS ain't good enough. I know, right? And so, I mean, I saw this movie years back and hadn't watched it since. Actually, I watched it first on VHS, then I watched it once on DVD, and then I watched it again to do this one. And you see Parkinson walk away, and then he's like, get better, or hypothalamus stew is very bloody hard to make. I know, right? Yummy. But anyway, hello there. So Lieutenant gets a call, and he's like, hey, Lieutenant, it's for you. Parkinson hands him the phone, and it's the fucking mayor. He's like, who is this, Lieutenant DeGusta? He's like, may I call you Vincent? Or Vincent, or what's your first name, Lieutenant? Vincent. Can I call you Vincent? Sure. Well, good. You can call me Arana. And I'm like, oh my God, it's a pompous one. I know it. And the person who played the mayor, I can't remember his name, but he did a wonderful job. He's like, this gala is very important to me, the people, and very important to my wife and Mr. and Mrs. Blaisdell. You know who they are? No, sir, I don't. Well, they're very good people, very good friends. And I wanted to thank you for a job well done about catching that murderer. Terrible business. But I wanted to thank you for a job well done. And I'll be so happy that I could tell them that we'll all be able to see this gala tonight. And then he also talks about how his wife's cleavage got him elected. She's wearing a killer dress that shows off her cleavage. You ever seen my wife's cleavage? Can't say I have, Your Honor. Well, that cleavage got me elected. It's like, Jesus Christ. You can't call me a rock, but you can call me Dwayne Johnson. So he's like, nice talking to you, Vincent. And then you see Parkinson just standing there with a big-ass smile on his face, and he's like, I'm going to increase police presence, and I'm going to shut off all access to other parts of the place or to the museum. And I'm going to increase police presence there throughout. How much police presence? As much as I goddamn deem necessary. You don't pull shit like that on a detective who is handling a homicide investigation and then and then pull a fast one on him. But then one of his partners, like, Lieutenant, you got to take a look at this. He's like, what is it? And then he reads a medal that says Jaime Martinez. He's like, Jaime Martinez. He was one of the victims on the Santos Morales. And he's like, oh shit, this has got to be our guy. You know? So all the, we know it's not, or we know it's a monster, but they don't. They wouldn't consider that because, well, monsters don't usually exist. So they have to let the gala go on. But because DeGusta, he's like, we already sweep the area with dogs. We'll get better dogs. I'm going to take them down myself so that we know for a fact there's nothing down here. You know? And you then see you see her going back to Margot, doing more of her science stuff, and she's looking through a microscope, and you see the package of leaves shake. So she goes by and looks, and you see this big-ass beetle just start crawling out across. Now, when it shows the beetle come out first, you see the mistake because it's on wheels, and it's just crawling toward her. And then when she grabs a book to crush it, if you pause and go slowly, frame by frame, you see that it's a stationary beetle that's meant to be crushed. It's really blatantly obvious if you have a quick eye, but it's really fun to watch. And so she takes a look at it. She's like, oh, I got the stuff here. I'll scan to see what the hell this thing is. And she's like, that's a domestic beetle, and then 33% Hermodactylus tursicus. So she then goes to Greg, wondering what it is. And you're like, can you identify the species? Oh, you want my help now? Look, can you do it or not? Hermodactylus tursicus. It's Turkish gecko. Gecko? Yeah, lizard. I know what a gecko is, but beetle DNA or beetle and reptilian DNA on the same strand, that doesn't make sense. Well, maybe your source is contaminated. And then he doesn't want to believe it. So he's like, well, then it's your software. Of course, I'd be shocked if it wasn't 100% accurate. And he's pretending to practice for the Blaisdells and whatnot. She's like, I'll let you get back to the Blaisdells now. And so the gala begins, and DeGusta is doing his final sweep with the dogs. I love how they cut between the dogs doing their final sweep, the gala, and Dr. Frock and Margot, because Dr. Frock goes to see Margot and she shows him the beetle and the readout and how the leaves are virally infected with these hormones. So they're like, or as he's reading the readout, he's like, Margot, these hormones are directly produced by the human hypothalamus. And they put the hypothalamus angle together, and they're like, do do you think or do you remember the detective saying something about the hypothalamus? Yeah. Do you think this has anything to do with Fred Ford's murder? Well, if it did, whoever killed Fred Ford really needed the hormones on that leaf. We better go find Lieutenant D'Augusta. And while they're trying to get out of the lab, well, Greg already told Parkinson that he was the last person out and it's completely deserted, knowing that Margot was still in there. So now he can get the Blaisdells all to himself and try to woo them into getting his grant, or their grant that for him. And as the dogs are going down into the tunnels, you learn that these tunnels help keep Chicago warm, and that this tunnel specifically goes down all the way to Lake Michigan. And he's like, could somebody get off a boat, travel these tunnels all the way to the sub-basement? He's like, yeah. And you're now figuring out that, holy crap, and now the dogs are picking up on a scent that they're chasing, and they run off into the dark. Well, as one of the other guy, or they're like, what the hell is going on? And then you hear one of the dogs whimper and yelp. And then you see that, or the dead dog comes flying back, and they're like, holy shit. And McNally or Hollingsworth has the shotgun, and he just starts blasting. And they're like, oh my God, what the fuck did that? You know? And you see this dog was torn to shreds. Back of the head, it was bitten and whatnot. So you see that whatever it was the same thing that killed everybody else, because the back of the head was bitten open, you know? Probably looking for a brain that didn't have the hormones that the human hypothalamus has. And so the owner of the dogs, or Bradley, he goes looking for his other one, and their names were Castor and Pollux. He's looking for Pollux because Castor is dead. And he's like, D'Augusta's like, Hollingsworth, you two, or you and him go upstairs, find Cuthbert, Parkinson, whoever the hell's in charge, and have them clear out the museum. Go. I'm going to go get Bradley. And so he goes after Bradley. Well, Bradley finds Pollux, and Pollux is dead scared in the dark with a light, or with a flashlight illuminating. And he's like, what's the matter with you? Come on. And then the Cathoga kills Bradley, rips off his head, and you see the dog just head down looking, it is scared shitless, and you see the Cathoga's mandibles in the flashlight shadowed, and then you see it move off. It's not going to kill the dog because the dog's not important to it. And so there's no reason to kill the dog. So now the gala is in full swing, and the mayor and everybody are going through the exhibit for the superstition exhibit. And D'Augusta finds the lair of Cathoga, which is littered with bones. This was an abandoned concept because in the book, hey, Keely, it's good to see you. I'm doing a review of the Relic. Now, in the book, this all takes place in New York, not in Chicago. Also, the lair of the Cathoga is littered with bones because it's been in there for 7 years, not weeks. So, yeah. The amount of skeletons in there would suggest that there's been bodies in there for years, you know? But anyway, he finds Pollux, or D'Augusta finds Pollux, and he's bringing the dog out. And, well, Hollingsworth gets up there with the other cop and interrupts the gala. And Cuthbert's like, may I ask, what do you think you're doing? He's like, my name's Hollingsworth. I'm with Chicago Homicide. We have a very dangerous situation. We have to clear the museum. Well, coinciding with what he's telling the mayor, there's blood dripping, and it starts dripping on a woman's head or face. And then she looks up, and a headless corpse falls down on some of the spears that are in the Amazon exhibit. And this causes a mass panic where everybody is trying to get the hell out of the museums, you start to see people panicking, and I love how it's realistic, because when you see people panicking and fleeing, especially women running in heels, well, some people are getting trampled. I mean, you see one woman trying to push out, and she's getting shoved up against the door, and you see her spit blood out of her mouth because she just got crushed up against the door. And then you see people tripping over and falling down the stairs to the museum, and as things are going off all over the place, the people up in the control room are like, what the hell's going on? Or the codes are going off one by one. Says we're having an earthquake. This is Chicago. We don't have earthquakes in Chicago. And the fire alarms go off, the sprinklers go off, everything is forcing the fire doors down. And these doors are like seriously, you have to use a thermal lance to get through them, and it takes a long time to do that. So it's like, holy shit, man. So then the power goes out, the generator is overwhelmed, or the generators are overwhelmed because of all the alarms going off all at once. So yeah. No, it's like, oh shit. You got a bunch of people still in there. The mayor, the Blaisdells, Greg Lee, who's trying to freaking woo the Blaisdells so he can get the money. It's all he cares about. And so one of the security guys goes to check what's going on with the generators and the computers and stuff. And he gets back and he's like, somebody just trashed all the equipment in there. You see the other guy just sitting there, and you hear on the radio Parkinson's asking for them to come on. And he's like, somebody answer me, for Christ's sake. He's like, hey, asshole, you gonna answer the man? So he touches his head, and the head just lolls back like this, severed and whatnot. And then you hear the Cathogas in the room with him. He looks up, and then you basically realize he's dead. So then as this is all going on, DeGusta gets on the radio, and he's like, Parkinson's like, no, DeGusta, put the mayor on. He's like, what? Put him on. This is Mayor Owen. Mayor Owen, this is Lieutenant DeGusta. Lieutenant DeGusta, sir. He gives his badge number. He's like, we spoke once before. Do you remember? I want you to consider very carefully, Lieutenant. With all due respect, sir, you could fire me on Monday, but right now I want you to shut your fucking mouth and listen to me very carefully. Or what, Lieutenant? Or none of you are going to survive to see Election Day. I love that line. I mean, Tom Sizemore just delivers lines perfectly, especially in this movie. So he's like, so he tells him, I'm putting Hollingsworth in charge. You all are going to do exactly what he says. And so he's like, Hollingsworth, are you there? Excuse me, Your Honor. He's like, I'm here, Lieutenant. Take them through the sub basement. You'll go through the tunnels. You'll come out across the street and from the museum. You go quiet, go quick, you go quiet, and you stick together. And so he then continues going on, and he finds Frock and Margot. As the people up in the museum are stuck, Parkinson, the mayor, or Parkinson, the Blaisdells, and Greg, plus McNally, one of the cops, is staying to protect those who don't want to go through the tunnels. And everybody else is going in. Parkinson, he's like, I ain't going through some stupid tunnel. And you see Dr. Cuthbert, Linda Hunt's character, get up. Shut up, Tom. Let's go. Like, Dr. Cuthbert, I don't think you should be doing this. Bullshit, Tom. You're fired. And it's just so great, man. So then you see, or it cuts down to DeGusta, and he finds a door opening, and it's Frock and Margot, and he's like, "Oh my God, Lieutenant, we've been trying to find you. We got to get out of here." And then you hear growling, and then you see in the shadow the Cathoga roars and starts trampling towards them. So they close the heavy doors, or they close the sub-basement door, which is a heavy locked door. I mean, it took him like 3 or 4 seconds to close that damn thing. And you see it bounding toward him and then jumping at him. Now, you think that something that big would have pushed the door open and it would have gotten through. But he managed to turn the lock in time, and you see it pounding against. You see metal flaking off the door. And he's like, you hear it growling, and then it moves off. He's like, anybody want to tell me what the hell or God's name that was? And Frock, he's like, I think it was the Cathoga. John Whitney must have found it somehow, some way in Brazil and brought it back here. But for God's sake, why wouldn't he give us warning? And he's like, how big were those crates that John Whitney sent back? Not very big. Well, how does something that big or how does something like that fit inside one of them? And so Margot goes over what they're postulating, the theory that they have. In the crates that Whitney sent back, there was a bunch of leaf specimens. They weren't, or we thought they were packing leaves, but these leaves contained a virus, and that contained a lot of hormones, animal hormones that are found in the thalamoid region in the human brain. And he's like, you mean the hypothalamus? And she's like, whatever, or I know this is crazy, but whatever was in those crates, probably this thing could have started out as a lizard or a bird or lizard or even a dog. And it's been rapidly changing into something new, into what we just saw. And Dr. Frock's like, you're not crazy, Margot. Don't you see? It's the Callisto Effect. It's really true. The Zanzera or the Cathoga myth was based on fact. And he's basically saying on how when the Zanzera had an enemy, they would feed these hormones to an animal, and it would transform into this horrible beast, and they would go into hiding until their enemies were destroyed, and that the beast would starve off and die out. And then they would come back out of hiding. Well, in this case, the Zanzera sees humans as, or people that are not of them, essentially, as an enemy, because they knew what would happen to this guy. They knew he would become the Cathoga. So it makes you wonder, how dangerous is this Zanzera tribe? I mean, honestly, if they're going to keep doing that, I would probably, no offense, but that's an extermination that needs to happen. But yeah, so D'Augusta and Margot decide to go back up, and Frock wants to be left behind because he can't go up the stairs in a wheelchair. They already had to go downstairs and whatnot. He's like, I'm staying here. You guys just go without me. I'll slow you down. And I'm staying here. And so they're back in the lab going over some of the fluid that the Cathoga left behind, because as it was ramming the door, you see some goo coming out from underneath it. And so she uses a plastic wrap to collect a sample of it. Now, while she's talking, she sees Sizemore rubbing his lucky bullet. She's like, what's that? Good luck bullet. Superstitious, I remember. Yeah. She's like, well, does your bullet have a story? I was on the beat my rookie year, and there was this guy that was trying to get locked his keys in his car, and he's concentrating so hard. What I didn't know is that he just robbed a liquor store a block away. So he's concentrating so hard, and he doesn't realize I'm there until I'm right up on top of him. And he turns, and it's a misfired weapon. And he's like, point blank range, doesn't pop though, doesn't go off, this bullet. And she's like, so what'd you do? Took the gun away and beat the shit out of him. He just says that so matter-of-factly that it's just hilarious to hear, you know? Like, took the gun away from him and beat the shit out of him. But then I went to ballistics to take a look at the bullet, and they said it's perfect. The bullet should have fired. I should be dead. So she's like, so another word, a miracle of physics, or maybe just good old-fashioned good luck, you know? So they get the results on their sample, but at this time, the Cathoga has worked its way into the sub-basement where Dr. Frock is, and he's looking at it, and he's being as still as possible, and it looks at him, and you could tell that it doesn't attack him right off. And Frock, you can see that, or he's looking up at it in awe because well, it's true. His theory is true. The Callisto Effect. And the creature is looking at him through a through a fence area, or fenced off storage area, and it blinks at him. It's almost as if you could tell that it is recognizing him, and then you see its teeth, or bare its teeth, and they cut from there. So you then get back to the people, or you then go back to D'Augusta and Margot, and they're reading off the results that it's part lizard, it's part gecko, it's part this and that, 1%, 2%. And she's like, Hemidactylus tursicus, 33%. And then you get another 33% human DNA. But also, before that, I forgot that Greg and everybody in the museum also got slaughtered. You see Parkinson, he's like, I'm not going to take the fall for this fiasco. When I get out of here, I'm going to find out what's going on. And when I find out what idiot pulled this stuff, I swear to God, when I get my hands on him, and then the Cathoga rips his head off and goes at, or McNally's trying to shoot at it, and its tail smacks him through a glass, killing him, so his brain's no longer useful. And Greg stops protecting the Blaisdells because he's a cowardly little shit. And he's annoying the hell out of the Blaisdells before the Cathoga attacked. Now, a lot of people would ask, how did nobody notice that thing get in there, when it started to attack people? I mean, you'd hear that thing coming. But you know what? Monster effects. So yes, from an objective standpoint, it doesn't make sense, but it's a scary movie. You can't expect it to be perfect. So he runs into the superstitious exhibit. The lights are out, and he then hears the creature behind him, or the breathing. So he turns around. There's nothing there, but then he realizes that it's actually behind him. When he turned around, he was actually facing the damn thing. He ran square into it. But yeah, it then kills him. And this is when we find out that it started out as a human. So they're scanning to see if they can identify who the human is, because obviously now it has started that thing started out as a human. So Hollingsworth is on the radio, and he's like, I think that thing is following us, Lieutenant. I think it knows where we are. And he's like, we're going to try decoying it, or decoying the thing, or the fucker away. And so he's like, hey, where's those leaves that thing likes to eat? And so they go back to the lab area to create a plan to probably freeze it or flash burn it. And so they have a liquid nitrogen tank that could shoot the liquid nitrogen at it to try to harm it or kill it or freeze it and whatnot. So they then get down to the area where Dr. Frock was, and he's like, wait, they see that it's messed up. He's like, let me go first. And then he sees Frock's body, and she starts coming in, and he's like, don't look. And she notices, obviously, she's distraught, and she takes off her heels. She's like, let's go. Kind of gung-ho, right? But because she knows that they have to move with a purpose. They have to put aside the grief and move with a purpose. So they get down into the tunnels, and as they are, the Cathoga attacks the group that's trying to escape. And Bailey, the other cop, is killed, and then another woman is killed, but then it turns around and swims off. And he's like, whatever that was, something made it go the other way. So if we keep moving, I will get you all out of this. And they end up outside of the museum. You also see, or before it left that area to go down into the tunnels, you also see rescue people barging through the glass from the roof. And as one person's starting to rappel, you see the Cathoga jump and grab it. And then you see it grab another person. And then this O.J. Simpson looking guy, it's like, pull me up, pull me up. And you see that it can scale walls because, well, it is part gecko and it's also using claws. And the guy gets up to the roof and he's like, oh, man. And then he stops and his face goes slack. Then they pull just his top torso up. And I love that. But the other guy that was there, he's like, ah, ah! He just screams out. And it's like kind of overly dramatic there, you know? So, then while they're down in the tunnels, D'Augusta sets up the leaves so that the scent will blow it down the tunnels. And you see the Cathoga come slowly up from the water, looking and seeing what's going on, and then go back down. And as he's coming out of it, the Cathoga comes out of the water ready to kill him, but she blasts it with the liquid nitrogen, hurting the Cathoga. You hear it screeching, and he's firing up as much as he can, and it goes back into the water, and they end up running. And then you see the Cathoga's like, comes out of the water like, okay, that fucking hurt. You know? I just imagine the Cathoga thinking, okay, that hurt, and I'm going to kill these fuckers for that. So, D'Augusta does the noble thing and tells Margot to get inside and lock the door, and that I'm going to try to draw it off. And she's like, draw it off? You've seen that thing? Yeah, I've seen it. Look, I know that if we look for another way, we can find a way out. Get inside. Get inside now. She's like, this is so stupid. Lock the goddamn door. And so she doesn't want to do it, but she does it anyway. And as she does this, she hears the results go off for her computer. And it identifies the human strand as John Whitney from a blood drive a few years prior. And she's like, oh my God, John Whitney. So she goes to call for the lieutenant, but the Cathoga comes crashing down into the lab through the roof of all places. And so now it's chasing her. She runs. She starts going into the sample basement area, starts pushing over all the flammable chemicals and stuff. Then she goes up and creates a flash bomb kind of thing. And as she's doing this, she starts hearing everything shake. And she looks below her and sees the Cathoga. And then you see the Cathoga go up the stair, crawling up the stairs. And she's standing still and she doesn't want, or she's scared to hell. And then the Cathoga reaches through one of the things trying to get to her. And so she runs, she's in one of the aisles, and the Cathoga stops. And during all this time, you see Vincent shooting at the door, trying to get in, open the goddamn door and whatnot. And all this time, you also see SWAT teams and stuff using a thermal lance to burn through the fire doors. And they finally get through and whatnot. But the main confrontation is between Margot and the Cathoga, and it goes up to her, and she's like, oh my God, just keep coming, just keep coming. To me, that was just kind of really cheesy dialogue, really. But she's backing up, and she backs up to a small little elevator area where she's pinned, and she's like, I know who you are. And the Cathoga sniffs her and actually licks her with a forked tongue. And it's like, okay. And she's thoroughly grossed out. She's like, oh my God. And then she's like, I know who you are. And then the creature's about to kill her. And then she throws the jar, and it causes enough of a flash to ignite the place up. It roars up as she gets into the elevator and sends it down. And as it comes down, it's looking like, fuck, I just missed her. And then and then the Cathoga ignites because it's also in the flammable area. Now, the chase of the Cathoga after it gets down the stairs to chase after her, this thing would have caught up to her in a couple gallops. She's running her as fast as she can towards the maceration tank. Each cut that this thing shows catches up to her. It's just bad cutting in this case. So she gets into the maceration tank, and it's then slows to get up to it, looking at her like, why did you do this to me? And so she's like, you go to hell, as the thing closes. And the explosion from all the flammable chemicals blows up the Cathoga. You know, or trademark blowing up the monster. So then, or the resultant explosion also blows open the door that Vincent is at and causes him to have the wind knocked out of him. And so the aftermath is the rescue teams come out and they're like, we got a lot of people that are chewed up, dead in there, man. And he's talking to the police chief, and he's like, to Gusta, when I get my hands on him, he'll be back in a fucking squad car. And then the mayor comes out, and he's like, Chief, these people are cold, and I want to get them under a roof as soon as possible. He's like, yeah, and leave DeAugusta alone. Otherwise, you might be the one in that squad car. And then he gives him a nodding or a suggestive nod. He's like, yes. And the mayor and the chief's like, okay. And so the mayor walks off. And then you see people are looking for what's going on in the lab, and they hear the pounding on the maceration tank. They let her out. And at one time, DeGusta gave her the lucky bullet. And he's like, you keep it. And so she's laughing, and they're walking. And you see DeGusta walk about to step over a part of the monster. And then he stops and walks around it. And she has no problem walking over it. And then they go to the outside of the museum where all the rescue crews are, and they run the credits. Now, this movie is good, but it is also very dark. I mean, they really should think about upping the light contrast or something, because that's the one thing that I did have a problem with it. The lighting was terrible in the areas with the monster. But that's probably because when they used practical effects with the monster, because there were practical effects with the monster, if they lit it too well, you would probably see that it was a suit where a guy was moving, you know? The sound effects, the creature effects, for the most part, were great. The digital effects are dated, definitely dated, but still the movie does have a good scare factor to it. Sorry about that, folks. The internet went out. We are getting some wind up here in the countryside. So yeah, that can knock the internet out sometimes, no matter how good of an internet you got. So yes, the movie definitely has its moments. It definitely is objectively, I would give the Relic, I would give it a 7 out of 10. For the most part, there are a couple of errors that could have been actually well, they could have been avoided. But for the most part, this movie is pretty well done. It's a 90s scare flick, man. You can't really expect much out of it, but it's truly entertaining to watch. Subjectively, it's a 9 to 10 out of 10. Excuse me. Moviegoer, it's a 10 out of 10. If you like horror movies and monster movies, this is a movie for you. But yeah, anyway, that is going to lead to the conclusion of my review. The clues for the next movie are Gina Carano and Double Cross. So if you know the movie, do not spoil it for anybody. It could be a couple different movies because Gina Carano does play in a few movies that somebody is double crossed in. So definitely let me know if you have any thoughts of who it might be on Facebook Messenger or Twitter DMs or whatever. But yeah, I will be putting the hints on Twitter for a little later. But anyway, folks, I want to thank Phil TMT, Keely Chow, Happy Dino, Price is Right Reviews, Ruben and Lovely Sherry and my friend Chris Daly for all stopping in and supporting the stream. I will be doing the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies coming up sometime this month. But yes, thank you so much, folks, for tuning in. Anyway, I shall talk to you all soon. This has been Orange Hat Reviews. Stay humble.